Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the Dungeon Dive, we are going to talk about Everrain. Now, I want to make sure this is very clear. This is not a review of Everrain. I have actually not completed a single game. I've started over a couple times, so I've started a few games, but I have yet to complete a single game, and I doubt that I will. I've had this game set up on my table, and I have this kind of wide angle right now on the camera to show you that this big kind of epic game actually does fit on my small 3x4 table for a solo game. So that is a good thing for people who have smaller tables like me, who might be interested in the Everrain. Rest assured, it fits on a small table and you will be able to play it. But I've had the game set up in my hobby room for a few days, 5 or 6 days. I've been playing it off and on, kind of struggling with it. And I just realized that I'm simply not having very much fun, if any fun at all, playing this game. And that is a problem. I don't think this is a bad game. I think for a certain type of gamer, for a certain group, or a certain type of solo gamer, the Everrain might be the perfect game. You might really enjoy it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the game in general. I'm going to do some comparisons to some other games in this overview, I should say, this discussion, and just kind of tell you some of the reasons why I personally don't like it. And you may take those reasons and think like, hey, I really like those kinds of things, and so you might really enjoy this game. Okay, so while I have been playing the Everrain, every time I sit down to my table, all I can think is that I could be playing Sleeping Gods. I could be playing Godshard. I could be playing Pirate Borg. I could be playing any of these other games that give me a similar feel. Now, Sleeping Gods, Pirate Borg, and Godshard. I am not saying that these are substitutes for the mechanisms found in the Everrain, because the Everrain is definitely doing its own thing. It has its own unique things to offer to the tabletop hobby, and that is super cool. Godshard is a solo role-playing game, but it is also one where you are out traversing the seas and going to different islands and discovering things. Porkborg. They should make Porkborg. I wonder if they do. I should look that up. A pig-based Morkborg. But Pirate Borg is another RPG that you can play solo. And again, you are pirates. You are out in the open sea, discovering islands and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, Sleeping Gods, I don't think needs an introduction. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Sleeping Gods is probably the closest to the Everrain in terms of what it offers. But I think for every choice that the Everrain made that was preventing me from having fun, Sleeping Gods kind of made the opposite choice to where I was having fun all of the time. So we might be revisiting some comparisons to Sleeping Gods as we talk about the Everrain. So like I said, none of those games are substitutes for the Everrain's mechanisms. However, I simply have more fun when I am playing them, and they give me that same kind of that a similar feel of adventure that the Everrain is trying to give me, where I am a captain of a crew. I am taking a sailing vessel. I am exploring the wide, vast reaches of the sea, looking for shipwrecks, looking for islands, fighting monsters, having narrative encounters. All of that stuff is present in the Everrain and in Sleeping Gods. But in Sleeping Gods, I simply have more fun on a turn-by-turn basis. So while Sleeping Gods and the Everrain do have some similar things going on, you are a captain of a ship, you are exploring the vast open reaches of an oceanic world, you are looking for islands, you are looking for ports, you are having narrative adventures, you're having combat encounters. Sleeping Gods takes all of that and kind of condenses it down. The turns are very snappy in Sleeping Gods. I feel like I'm always doing something fun. I feel like every turn I am doing something cool in Sleeping Gods. Whereas in the Everrain, they've kind of taken all of that and they've stretched it out into where everything just feels like it takes a really, really long time to accomplish in the Everrain. From movement to healing to even having your story adventures, everything is stretched all the way out. And I get the sense that that was a conscious design decision to kind of simulate the vastness of the world that you are exploring. But unfortunately for me, it doesn't translate into much fun. There were a lot of times, there have been a lot of times while I am playing the Everrain that I just feel like I'm not really doing anything, just because everything takes so long. The Everrain is also a very, very long game because of those reasons. Now, I don't have anything against long games by just their nature of being long. I like some long games. Xia Legends of the Drift System is kind of a long sandbox style game. So is Dungeon Crusade. Dungeon Crusade is a very long sandbox style game. However, in Xia, in Dungeon Crusade, in those long games, I feel like every turn I am doing something fun. I'm having fun every single turn. I am making progress or I am just doing something cool. I'm just simply having fun on a turn by turn basis. And I don't get that same feeling in the Everrain. In the Everrain, I feel that the game is long and it's done so just to kind of stretch out the time. It almost feels like one of those video games where the designers add a whole bunch of grind and a whole bunch of things just to make the game longer, just so they can say, hey, our game has 100 hours of gameplay. Well, really, what you've done is you've taken 20 hours of gameplay and you've simply stretched that over the time. And I get the sense that the Everrain is kind of like that. I think you could condense this down to a 1 or 2 hour experience and have the same amount of fun that you would have in a 3, 4, or 5 hour experience. One of the main criticisms I have of the game, and one of the main things that has prevented me from fully enjoying the game, is the rulebook. The rulebook is pretty bad. It's as bad as people have been saying. It's one of those rule books where I think all of the rules are presented, all of the rules are here. Nothing is really missing. However, it's so convoluted to get through. It's not organized very well. The rules are kind of scattered about. Some core rules you will just have in the component overview, or some core rules you will only have in examples and not in the text. And so it makes having to find things while you are playing, while you are looking up rules, it makes that very, very difficult to do. And while I have been playing, I have probably spent at least as much time in the rulebook as I have playing the game. I think the rules are kind of so convoluted that even the universal head rules summary isn't helping me out much. And that's the first time this has ever happened. Usually, I can learn and play a game very easily with the universal head rules, but there's just something about the Everrain's construction, its mechanisms, and the way everything works that makes learning and playing this game very difficult for me. I wish the rulebook was better organized. I wish it kind of told you what you should be doing. It's one of those rulebooks where after I read the rulebook for the first time, in my mind, I thought that I knew the rules, but when I sat down to play the game, I was thinking, oh wait, okay, what do I do now? How do I start the game? What does this mean? What does that do? And it seemed like every single turn I was trying to find something in the rules to figure out how to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. So let's talk a little bit now about how I think things are stretched out too thin or stretched out to take up too much time. When you are playing the game, of course, you will have your ship there, and then you will have a crew board. Now I'm going to kind of move my crew board onto the main board, so it's going to be a little messy here. But you will have your ship board here, and then you will also have your crew, and your crew will be shown by these placards here, and these will represent your crew, how much damage they can take, their strength of their skills when they were on an island or when they were at a port, of how they can accomplish certain things. And so you will have a number of these. Each ship, each player can have up to 4 crewmen. And on your ship, you will have a below decks area where you can upgrade your ship, and you will have an armaments area where you can upgrade your ship's port, bow, stern, port, and starboard weapons. You have a place where you can keep your money, and then your commands, and these are your actions that you can take. And each time you spend one of these tokens, you can do a certain thing. However, I feel like they just don't give you enough action points to accomplish much on a turn-by-turn basis. For instance, for navigating, for moving your ship does take forever in this game. And you can have some turns where you just turn your ship a couple hex faces, and that's all you do in a turn. Each one of these is a navigation token, and you can spend one of these for 1 point of navigation. 1 point of navigation is either moving or turning 1 hex face. If you are in a calm sea, if you're in a stormy sea, then that's double. So you would have to spend 2 navigation points just to turn 1 face. You may only have 2 navigation tokens, commands at your disposal. So that may be all you do on 1 turn as far as movement is turn. Now, you can offset that a little bit by assigning your crew members these command tokens, and you can assign them to different spots on your ship, which can add to your navigation. So these spots, these nodes here that match the command tokens, you can send those guys, you can send a crewman to that spot. And then when you spend a point of navigation, you can get 2 points of movement. So you could get quite a few on 1 turn by spending all of these tokens on 1 turn, and then those would go into your issued orders spot. But at the beginning of each turn, you only get 3 back. So 2 are going to be locked until your next turn. So you might have one really big and exciting turn, and then your next turn, you really can't do much of anything because you're stuck, because you have your issued orders are stuck down here. So you kind of have to give up another turn to get those back. And I just found that exploring the world was more of a chore. It wasn't fun. I get the sense that they wanted to kind of simulate how each hex was a vast area of open and treacherous sea, but it just ended up being kind of boring for me to move around. Another thing that kind of stretches out the time of this game is the cards, the narrative encounters. I think this is a really cool idea. You guys know how much I love narrative encounters in games, and Everrain has quite a few, and the ones that I have experienced are pretty neat. However, like the movement, like a lot of the things in this game, the story system is really convoluted, and I'm not quite sure why they went for such a convoluted way of handling this. The convolution doesn't really add anything that a non-convoluted game has to offer. You know, in Sleeping Gods, you go to an island, you open up the storybook, and you kind of have a complete story, a complete narrative engagement in a single turn. In the Everrain, that one story that you would have on 1 turn in Sleeping Gods is stretched out over multiple turns, and you have to really work at completing it to see that progress. So what you would do is, let's say I was out, let's say this is at an island's encounter card. So I had explored an island. I found this card, and then I passed my test. So then it would tell me to add card 11 to my story deck. So your story deck here is a deck of cards that has all of your various different kinds of encounter cards. You have your denizen encounters. These are people that you can discover in ports and cities. You have your open sea encounters and your island encounters. And these are in number order. So I would search through this deck here to find card 11 if I had passed that test. So here is card 11. And then what I would do is I add this to a deck that is kind of like the library or the codex in Fallout or in Arkham Horror 3rd Edition. This is an ongoing story deck. So that card gets added to the ongoing story deck. And then down here, there is a track. And at certain points on this track, there is a book. When the player or the enemy discovery token hits one of those storybook icons, then you take all of the cards that were in your ongoing story deck and you add those back to the regular deck that they might have been drawn from, but you set those perpendicular. And then the next time you are told to draw one of those cards, so in this case, a C adventure card, then you look through the cards that are perpendicular to find the number you need, and then you would take that card. If somebody else was told to draw one of these cards before you got to that card, they would look at it and say, okay, this is not my story, this is somebody else's story, so they would go in and draw the next card. That's a really convoluted system for what is basically accomplishing a very simple kind of choose your own adventure story element. And I'm just not quite sure why they went with that. But like I said, it just makes things take a lot more time. When you go to port, going to port is fun because you do get to possibly draw one of these denizen cards. Every time you go to port, there's a chance that you will meet a new denizen. And these are really cool little story things where things can start and then things can take you out on great adventures. I love these cards. This is super cool. But when you go to port, again, everything just kind of takes a long time. You can send your crewmen to different spots, but they can only really do one thing per day. It takes a long time to get anything, to get your engine rolling. And this game is as much of a resource management, action selection, and worker placement game as it is an adventure game. And hey, a combination of those different kinds of elements is really cool. I like that. But what I don't like is because everything takes so long to get rolling, it really does take a long time to get your ship moving, to get your crew built up, that any little setback really adds a lot of time to the overall experience. Now, one other thing that I do enjoy, but it is also kind of a double-edged sword because there is one thing that I do not enjoy about it, and that is the detailed island exploration. So when you discover an uncharted island, you can play this optional mini game where you will take these exploration tokens and you will shuffle those up and you will put those on the various nodes on this island. And then you can send one of your crew to explore the island, and then they can reveal these tokens to get bonuses, maybe sometimes fight monsters. And as they are moving through the island, they are moving towards this final spot here, which is this exploration spot. And then once they do that, they get to draw one of the island exploration cards. This is really weird though, because, okay, so the deck for starting sea adventures is quite large. I mean, that is a good number of cards to start sea adventures. I'm very happy with that. The deck to start denizen adventures is fairly large. This is a really good deck of cards here. These two decks of cards offer up that special quality I'm always talking about the illusion of exploration, the illusion that anything can happen in this game. However, when you start exploring your islands, you are stuck with this little tiny deck. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, only 10 cards for exploring islands. Now, there are some more island exploration cards in your story deck. These will never start stories. These will only be middle and ending chapters of a story. So to start an island story, you only have 10 options. Now on the tiles here, if you look at the tiles, let's take a look at all the tiles here and figure out how many islands there are. So if you were to explore the game, there's a possibility that you could find 1, let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So if you were to play a long game and explore the entire map, you would actually, not only would you see every single starting island adventure card, but you would have to reshuffle this 10 card deck and have a repeat adventure. So you could possibly see everything of one part that this game has to offer in a single game. That's really weird. I'm not quite sure why they made this deck so thin, and that just, it kind of destroys my, it puts a damper on my desire to go out and explore those islands because I don't want to see everything. One other point where this game really bogs down is with the crewmen. So each crew you can hire when you go back to port, and each one of those is going to be randomly dealt a positive and negative trait. On paper, I think this is a pretty cool idea. I like the idea that, you know, your deck hands are going to be different than other players' deck hands. But in practice, what this does is add a ton of fiddliness to a game that already has a lot going on, because every single time you do something, you need to check your crew to see if either they have a benefit in doing that or a detriment in doing that, a positive trait or a negative trait. And so I just kind of found myself constantly looking at these little cards and to figure out if I could do what I needed to do. And it was just another point in this game where something bogged down. And that is kind of how I feel about every single element of the Everrain. It seems like every single choice was made to make the game longer, less peppy, less snappy. And because of that, I felt like every turn was just kind of a slog. And this whole past week, this past 5 or 6 days that I've had the game set up, every day that goes by, I want to play it less and less. And that's not the sign of a good game for me. I'm not saying that the game is poorly designed. I know there are people out there who really do like it. I think there are people out there who are going to like that kind of slow and plodding nature of the game, of really thinking about your crew and your ship, taking the time to explore and getting a lot out of that kind of that long, kind of plodding, slow, kind of meandering game. You might really enjoy that. But for me and for where I am right now, I just need something to be a little more peppy, a little more upbeat. I want to have more fun on a turn-by-turn basis. And I just wasn't having very much fun playing Everrain. And I know that if I were to just set up Sleeping Gods, I would immediately be having fun. Or if I was to create a new adventure with some characters for Pirate Borg or for Godshard, and Godshard will be the next game I take a look at on the channel, I would be kind of immediately having more fun and getting that same kind of thematic experience. And that's really what is important to me right now, is just having a fun thematic experience. I'm not so much into the kinds of mechanisms that the Everrain is offering. So I hope you guys found this useful. Hope I wasn't too negative on the Everrain. It's just not a game for me. And it's not a game that I am excited to play anymore. So I am going to be selling it. And I'm pretty bummed out because thematically, this scratches so many of my itches. So, all right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. We will talk to you later. Bye-bye.